The tide of war is receding. With these words, President Obama announced that all American troops will be withdrawn from Iraq by the end of this year. Speaking from the White House press briefing room just a couple of hours ago, he explained his decision.
As of January 1st, and in keeping with our strategic framework agreement with Iraq, it will be a normal relationship between sovereign nations, an equal partnership based on mutual interests and mutual respect.
Operation Iraqi Freedom has been at considerable cost to this nation. Over 4,400 U.S. military killed, over 32,000 wounded, including over 1,000 amputees, all at a cost to American taxpayers of more than $712 billion. In his remarks, the president made it clear he also intends to end our involvement in Afghanistan in the not-too-distant future.
The United States is moving forward from a position of strength. The long war in Iraq will come to an end by the end of this year. The transition in Afghanistan is moving forward, and our troops are finally coming home.
And then there was this pronouncement, one that military families across the land have been waiting for almost a decade.
Here at home, the coming months will be another season of homecomings. Across America, our servicemen and women will be reunited with their families. Today, I can say that our troops in Iraq will definitely be home for the holidays.
And as the president pulls down the curtain on one of the longest and most divisive conflicts in U.S. history, what is the reaction from Congress? Senator Carl Levin is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he joins us now from Capitol Hill. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Do you agree with the president's decision to bring all military personnel back from Iraq at the end of this year?
I do, very much so. He made the right decision. He made it for the right reason. We would have considered leaving a few thousand troops there as trainers, but the Iraqis said that they would then have to be subject to the jurisdiction of Iraqi courts, and we just don't have that much confidence in Iraqi courts that we would subject our troops to that. So even that small number of possible trainers was decided against. The president was right to protect our troops that way, and he's right to implement this end of the year decision for bringing all of our troops home. By the way, a deadline or a date which was set by President Bush.
But isn't this decision based, as you say, on a failure to agree on immunity for military personnel? Doesn't it sound more like a resigned capitulation as opposed to the completion of a mission?
But it's not a capitulation at all. It's the enforcement of a very important principle, and it involved a decision relative to leaving a few thousand trainers or not. And we were willing to consider that, but not under the terms that the Iraqis set. But that does not turn this into any kind of a capitulation. It's a determination to do the right thing relative to our troops. And the main policy here, though, was to get all of our troops out by the end of the year, as the president promised, implementing a decision that the Bush administration had made relative to that. And I think both of those decisions were the right ones, because the Iraqis have got to take responsibility for their own security, just as we're transferring the responsibility to the Afghan forces for their security.
There are something like 670,000 Iraqi security forces at work now in Iraq, I believe since March. But there are still questions about their competence, their training, and also their independence. How much of a concern are they as we proceed to this withdrawal in December?
It's a concern, of course, but the way in which those concerns need to be addressed are by the Iraqis. We cannot resolve those kind of issues for them. There are political divisions in Iraq which have not been resolved, which are also a concern. They haven't decided how they're going to divide oil revenues between various parts of the country, for instance. There are a number of issues internal to Iraq which they can solve. They got an army now of a very large size. They are trained. They are able to maintain security. And we've got to basically continue to set these kind of dates and deadlines as ways of giving incentives to Iraq and now to Afghan leaders to resolve their own issues, to get their armies built up, and to secure their own people.
Where does this leave, though, the remaining presence for the next 3 months of American troops? Will they not be tempted to stay within the green zone? And in effect, won't that mean that operations effectively cease from today?
No, I don't think so. I think their orders are that the particular kind of missions that they have will continue until certain dates, and they will carry out those orders. Hopefully, we're not going to lose any more troops during these months, but the risk will continue until that December date. It'll continue after that because we will still have some of our folks there protecting our embassy, for instance, and we need to do that. So it's not like it's risk-free after December or high risk before December. There's risks now, and those risks will be reduced when our presence is ended in terms of any combat presence, but it's still, there will be risks to Americans as well as to American troops in Iraq because it's not yet a totally stable place. As
you know, there's much dissent on this pullout in the ranks of Congress. I wonder if you would mind me playing you what Senator John McCain said on the Today Show this morning. Do listen.
They've done some very good things. The fact is that we're leaving Iraq, and Iran's number one priority is all U.S. troops out of Iraq. In Afghanistan, every military leader has said the president's plan for withdrawal is a greater risk. There is perception around the world that the United States is weakening and withdrawing. As far as Iraq and Afghanistan is concerned, I think I'm very worried.
Sir, isn't this a strong argument, given that Iran is ready and prepared on the border with Iraq to actually move in as American troops move out? How much of a concern is Iran?
Well, Iran's a very big concern, and one of the reasons that there was a real issue about going into Iraq as we did and leaving it, or not leaving it, but creating some instability there was that it would help to produce a stronger Iran. But there's a lot of worldwide unity against Iran. It is growing, and so the deterrence against Iran either getting a nuclear weapon or being overly ambitious in terms of her reaching out to other countries, that deterrence has got to be created and is being created by putting together an international community that is putting a huge amount of pressure on Iran.
How do you think history will look back on this near decade of war in Iraq?
It's going to depend on the outcome, and it's way too early to know whether or not the Iraqis, the political leadership there, will step up and resolve their political differences or not, and whether or not there's going to be a continuing move towards stability, or whether or not some of the cracks and crevices that exist in Iraqi society are going to become deeper rather than being smoothed over. I have great concern for the religious minorities in Iraq, by the way, including the Christian minority in Iraq. I have terrific concern in terms of instabilities and the possibilities of religious intolerance and attacks against one religious group or another. Those are far from over. So that's the reality in Iraq. But our continuing to stay there just takes the Iraqi political leadership off the hook. They've got to do the things necessary to lead to a greater stable Iraq and to a Iraq which respects the rights of religious minorities. They've got to step up to that for their own sake. We cannot enforce that or impose that on them, and keeping more troops there is not the way to do it after 9 years. They've got to accept the responsibility and understand that nobody else can make those decisions but themselves.
Final question, sir. What are your thoughts for those who paid the ultimate price in Iraq, for their families here in America?
That's where our first thoughts must be, and I'm glad the President emphasized that, because the sacrifice of our troops and their families is extraordinary. We've paid a very, very heavy price in blood and treasure. The American military people are unbelievable. I am amazed and so proud every day by what they do and what they're willing to accept and what their families do. And that kind of pride in them will hopefully continue now forever and never be diminished by any differences over policies. I differed, as many people did, with the decision to go into Iraq. But once that decision was made, and it was made democratically, although I felt it was based on erroneous and deceptive at times information, the decision was made. And once that decision was made democratically by the Congress, then the American people and the Congress supported our troops. And that's the way it should be, and that's the way, hopefully, it will always be.
Senator Carl Levin, we echo those sentiments, and we're very grateful to you for joining with us.
Thank you.